Hello friends, how are you? Welcome to my channel. So let's start the today fanfiction story. What if Deku Quirk clash? 13's warning. Let's start the story. Class 1A, the next day. Izuku did not have a good feeling about today, and he wasn't even going off of danger sense. Of course, the fact that danger sense was constantly making a light buzz in his brain did call for even more worry. Izuku could feel it before he even got out of his bed. He felt it when he went to pick up Akira, he felt it when they arrived at school, and he had been feeling it for the entire day. The teen grumbled at the fact he couldn't even enjoy his lunch since Danger Sense decided to pulse for the entirety of it. Now they were about to enter their last class of the day, their hero class, and Izuku was still waiting for whatever danger to present itself so that he could kick its ass. Stupid danger was starting to give him a headache. However, the greenette had to snap himself to attention as Aizawa walked into the room. "Good afternoon, children." The man greeted them with his usual, tired tone. He was still in his sleeping bag. "I hope you all haven't tired yourself out today as we're about to have a special class." His statement earned the reactions he expected and he activated his quirk to quiet them down. "It will be overseen by All Might, one of the other staff, and myself." At the mention of a mystery teacher, the class began to tremble lightly in excitement. "Aizawa-sensei," Zero exclaimed, raising his hand. "What kind of training are we doing?" Aizawa pulled out a card from his belt and flashed it in front of the class. "Rescue training." He didn't bother activating his quirk when they got excited this time. It would have been a concern if they didn't. "Today you start your journey on learning to deal with natural disasters, hard terrain, and worst-case scenarios. Trust that your other teachers and I will make you professionals at this." Kaminari turned around to smile at Kirishima. "I can't believe it, dude. Rescue training. We're really getting into it now. I'm gonna crush this, man," Kirishima responded, punching his fists together with a toothy smile. "This is the entire reason I became a hero, saving people from the worst." Sue looked on thoughtfully. "I'm hoping that there's a water scenario at wherever we're going, Kiro." She croaked out to Ida. "I really want to show off my water skills." "I agree, Asui." "I wasn't finished." Aizawa had to fix the students down with a glare again as his eyes turned red and his hair floated menacingly. It did its job very well. "Now, if you wish for this class, you can just wear your PE uniforms instead of your costumes." He activated the wall and the students' briefcases popped out. 10 minutes. Be down by the bus stops or you're being left behind. This time, Aizawa watched on with an impressed look as his entire class shot off before he could even begin to walk towards the door. It actually made him smile. UA bus, 15 minutes later. The entire class had just barely been able to make it onto the bus in the 10-minute time limit Aizawa had given them. Kirishima and Kaminari had to jump through the open windows while the bus was still moving. But they had all made it and were now just idly talking with one another. Stars. This is getting worse. Except for Izuku. Danger sense was still bothering him and was slowly pinging harder and harder in his head. Whatever the danger was had to be at wherever they were going. "If it's a villain, I swear I'm going to." "Excuse me, Midoriya, Kiro," Sue croaked out, pulling Izuku out from his thoughts and minor headache. "Oh, yeah, Sue." Izuku learned throughout the day that the frog girl didn't like anyone in the class calling her by her family name and made an effort to tell everyone that. "What's up, Hiro? You can probably guess by now that I generally say whatever I'm thinking." The frog girl started before looking her fellow greenette right in his eyes. "You and Captain Celebrity have pretty similar quirks." Not even Izuku expected the groan that came out of his mouth at Sue's statement, but he went with it. "Why does everyone keep relating me to Captain Celebrity? What's up with that?" Momo raised her hand. She really didn't need to, before speaking. "You must admit, Midoriya, your quirks are quite similar." "Yeah, man, flight and super strength." Kirishima nodded his head in agreement with the other two. "Your quirks are like the exact same." Captain Celebrity's quirk is tactile telekinesis, my quirk is just energy. Izuku deflected quickly without even thinking about it. His quirk can give him an aerodynamic barrier and create a telekinetic shield to protect himself and others plus a lot more. My quirk is a raging river of energy that I can't even use at full power, so I just punch and kick stuff. Ajiro shook his head with a small laugh. "If you want to call what has to be a decade worth of martial arts training just punching and kicking, sure." Wait, hold the damn phone." Zero started, leaning in from the back to get in on the conversation. "What do you mean you can't use your quirk at full power? Didn't you do that at the battle trials?" Izuku suppressed a grimace at the reminder of that day but shook his head. "Yeah, no." He shrugged with an embarrassed look. "That was only like 30%. The most I've used at UE is 40% and that was at the entrance exam." Any other conversations on the bus stopped as everyone slowly turned their heads to Izuku with wide eyes filled with awe, immense shock, and horror. "What?" Akira had already covered his ears when the class yelled that, having seen the reaction coming. "Are you informing us that you completely obliterated a 0-pointer, emerged victorious against us in our apprehension test?" and destroyed 3 mock city buildings. Fumicage started, his tone becoming more lost and surprised as he spoke. Without even half of your quirk's power. Izuku took a moment to stop squirming under everyone's gazes before nodding. Well, yeah, how? Kaminari and Kirishima both asked at the same time, leaning forward to look the greenette right in his face. Forget the how, Kiro. Sue, however, cut them both off and sat them down before looking at Izuku. Why? She sighed and rolled her eyes at the greenette's confused look. Why don't you use more than half of your power? It's not that I don't want to, Izuku started, shaking his hands in front of himself frantically. I just can't. My body can't take the physical backlash that my quirk has on me. Aoyama looked at him with a tilted head. What kind of backlash? He asked, suddenly seeming very intrigued. As if your body wasn't made for your quirk. Izuku nodded hesitantly at the blonde's question before raising his finger and letting one for all flow into it. Look, if I'm at 40%, then my body is fine with a tiny bit of strain at the most. 45% is reaching the limit of the amount of strain I can handle. His eyes started to glow as he pushed more and more of one for all out. 50% moving up to 60% is where my muscles start snapping and my bones start to shake hard. One for all sparks shot out of the greenette's finger and his face showed obvious discomfort. And then anything beyond that. A large breath came out of him as he let go of his quirk, his light show stopping. I break. Akira put his hand over Izuku's and let his quirk flow out. You could have just described it. The demonstration is just you being extra. He jabbed with a smile. Yeah, I know. Izuku shook his hand out. But it helps get the point across. He looked back to Tsu with a smile. So does that answer your question? Sue nodded, seemingly satisfied but secretly left with hundreds more questions that she wouldn't ask right now. Kiro, I was wrong about Captain Celebrity, that's all might level strength. Had Izuku not gotten used to calling one for all his own quirk, he might have panicked there. Luckily for that potential version of himself, Kaminari jumped back in to draw away attention. I'd still like an answer for my how question, he said, raising his hand. How can you only use less than half of your quirk's power after like a whole decade of having it? Jiru smacked him upside the head at his comment. Did you already forget our introductions? He's only known about his quirk for a year. Izuku nodded at the purple-haired girl's statement. Yeah, just a stockpiling quirk that's been gathering power for a long time, that I didn't know about. When he put it like that, he actually wasn't lying in the slightest. I mean, growing up everyone including myself thought I was. We left them all behind, Akira quickly said, doing his best not to look at Bakugo. We left our pasts behind. There was clear anger in his tone. There's no need to think on it, let it die. A tone Izuku answered back to with his own light anger. We don't leave our pasts behind, Akira. He chided, trying to stop his friend before either of them could go on a rant. They didn't need this scene right now. We accept what happened and use it to grow. What happened was disgusting. Akira's voice took on a venom and his quirk activated without thought. All because you were different. Just existing was enough for some of them too. Akira. Izuku's voice was silent and calm, but there was an ocean of sadness behind it and a noted edge of demand. Please, not here was left unsaid. Luckily, Akira heard it all the same and his quirk died down. Fine. The argument, small as it was, created a quiet awkwardness in the air. Sue was the first to break it. Kiro, I'm really sorry for bringing up bad memories, Midoriya. Her head was down in a bow and she was twiddling her thumbs in uncharacteristic nervousness. I didn't mean to. Being a mutant, the girl had an idea of what Izuku went through. She hated even the thought of it. The greenette shook his head with a small smile. There's no need to apologize, Sue, he said, waving the girl's apology away. It's all a part of me I live with and accept. You're a strong person, Midoriya, Shoji suddenly said, his words leaving his real mouth before he could conjure a duplicate. Discrimination can leave its marks, mental, emotional, physical. He felt his mouth underneath his mask tingle but shook it away. To say that you take what happened and live with it, stronger have broken. Izuku looked Shoji right in his eyes and nodded in understanding. Thank you, Shoji. Many things went unsaid, communicated through eye contact, before he turned to see Mina hugging his arm. Mina, I think you're really cool, Midori. The pink-skinned girl said softly, looking the greenette right in his eyes. You're amazing, kind, and strong. Even she had been victim to the world's harsh views. She knew words could hurt, but they could help just as well. Thank you, Mina. And her words worked as they put a smile on Izuku's face. That means more than you think. Inwardly, though, he was doing all he could not to cry at the sincerity with which she spoke. There was also a small blush he was working down as well. However, before the class could get back to normal conversations, the bus stopped. All right, students. Aizawa stood up from where he was lying down and took off his sleeping bag. File off and focus up. We're here. Yes, Aizawa-sensei. The students all did as such with a smile on their faces. Let's go. As they did, Aizawa watched them walk out with a sad smile. They didn't say it out loud, but their eyes said it all. He wasn't actually asleep. The man rarely ever is, and that acceptance and happiness he saw in Izuku's eyes so young, reminded him of. Aizawa followed his students off the bus. Unknown UA off-site facility. Damn, this place is huge, Kaminari said as they walked up to the large, dome-shaped facility they would be training at. What the hell is in here? Won't find out by standing around. Akira walked forward and pushed open the large doors with ease. He was a tiny bit surprised by their lightness, but that turned into awe as he saw what lay beyond the entrance. Oh, damn. Oh, damn. Zero repeated Akira's statement with gusto and ran in with Kirishima and Kaminari. Look at all of this. Jiru followed them at a walking pace but was no less awed. This place is like a theme park. She wasn't really wrong. Yeah. Mina followed the punk rock girl with a skip in her step. This is just like USJ. You're not wrong there. A loud voice echoed out throughout the facility, causing all the students to flinch. Don't worry, students, I mean no harm. A figure suddenly slammed down in front of the class, creating a small dust cloud which obscured them. However, the dust suddenly started swirling before disappearing into the figure's palm, revealing the person in front of them to be a woman. A tall, young woman with short, navy blue hair with blonde at the top of her head in a spiral pattern, making her head look like a small galaxy. Her eyes were a light hazel with rings making them look like black holes, and her light skin almost looked like it had a faint glow to it. She wore a form-fitting but bulky navy blue steel suit that covered her entire body aside from the end of her hands and her face. But the most prominent feature the woman held were her still visible hands, black as the night sky and just radiating with energy. Everyone knew who this was, but Ochako was the first to react. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. The brunette was bouncing in place and had an excited smile on her face. It's really her. The space hero, 13. The woman nodded with a large grin on her face. Yeah, that's me. Anin Kuros. Yanan Hailai. The space hero, 13. Japan's foremost expert on rescue operations and one of the world's greatest rescue specialists. She's a hero that shows people that you don't need to fight to be a hero. Of course, she still can beat someone up if the time calls for it. Quirk, black hole. This emitter quirk lets on and creates small black hole-like gravity points on any part of her arms to suck in and crush anything down to the atomic level. Trust me when I say you don't want to be on Anin's bad side when she activates this baby. I can't believe it. I'm actually seeing her in person. Ochako whisper shouted into Akira's ear as she shook the black-haired teen by his shoulders. This is like a dream come true. She was actually floating now out of excitement. No one missed this. She's absolutely adorable. And 13 in particular thought the act was sweet. However, she had to ignore that, for now, and get to her job. Anyway, like I said, you're not wrong when you say this place is like the USJ, she said, spreading out her arms to present the facility to the students. This is the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ for short. Oh, it's actually Universal Studio Japan. The class collectively thought before smiling. Cool. 13. Aizawa walked through his class, the students parting for him without needing to be told to. Where's All Might? He was supposed to be here already. He looked around with a keen eye. Did you both plan a grand entrance? 13 waved his accusation off with a forced laugh. PSHHD. What? No. She drawled out her words at her co-worker's stare. All right, yes, but we were supposed to jump in together. He's still out on patrol. Aizawa raised an eyebrow. What do you mean still out on patrol? He asked. The blonde wasn't even supposed to be out there to begin with. Major rise in crime today across the entirety of Shizuoka, 13 said with a shrug. Even with all the heroes patrolling and doing all they could, the HPSC asked for All Might to assist them. She chuckled a bit at the memory of her watching All Might shoot off. He didn't even get to put his costume on. The big guy is out there right now beating up villains while looking like a bouncer. The students all looked a bit downtrodden but understood that they wouldn't be having the symbol of peace again today. He was doing his actual job, so they supposed it was fair. They also took solace in the funny thought of their teacher running around Shizuoka beating villains while in a suit. Aizawa, however, still looked a bit peeved. Of course there's been a rise in crime. He drawled out before nodding in acceptance. Looks like we'll just have to manage by ourselves today. It's getting bigger. And while this entire teacher exchange was happening, Izuku could feel danger sense reaching its peak. Whatever danger there was, it was almost here. And All Might isn't here. Please, we'll be fine. 13 waved off Aizawa's worry with a wave. Black wisps coming off her hands as she did so. Now, small heroes to be. There is something serious we need to discuss before we start our training today. The students stood straight. I know that the media sometimes portrays heroes such as myself as specialists, and one of the greats for our impressive quirk usage to save the day. But know that all of our quirks can do the exact opposite as well. A rush of sounds echoed in Izuku's head at the hero's words, the sounds of bones breaking and blood spilling. Wait, but he couldn't think on it for long as danger sense flooded his head before suddenly disappearing. It's here, and his legs were taking him to the end of the entrance without him realizing. So, I want you all to be mindful. 13 paused her speech as she watched Izuku walk off to the stairs in a trance. Midoriya. All Might told her that the greenette was distractible at times, but she didn't think it'd be this bad. Are you? Nothing is okay. Izuku answered the question before it could be asked. The lights across the entire facility shut off as he did so. Great. This, obviously, caused a light bout of panic in the greenette's class. Oh my god. What's happening? What is this? Alright, so a few of them were a bit more panicked than others. It's villains. Izuku told them. They were all walking in from a large, cloudy, purple gate, causing the greenette's mind flashed back to Fukuoka. This is the warper Hawks was talking about. The one that his thoughts cut out as he watched a very large, obsidian-skinned beast walk out of the portal. Another one. A dark figure suddenly rushed past Izuku and he saw that it was Aizawa. His goggles were up and he had his hands wrapped in his scarf. 13. Get the kids out of here, quickly. The man recognized a warper when he saw one. He had to deactivate, fast, and get the others down here. Got it, Eraser. 13 shouted back before turning around to the students. You heard your teacher, kids, get moving. She looked towards Izuku, who was still transfixed on the villains, and shouted at him. Midoriya, let's go. The hero's words snapped Izuku out of his trance and he quickly turned around. Coming. He left his teacher one last worried look before running to catch up to the class. Main Plaza. A villain with gun barrels at the end of his fingers watched with a raised eyebrow as a lone, shadowed figure began to descend toward them from the stairs. Seriously. Only one pro for all of us. He grinned and aimed his hands right at the man. Shooting squad, forward. Another villain with floating, gray hair stepped forward and swung her head around. Who does this guy think he is? She got into a crouch and snarled. This is gonna be too easy. Hearing the challenge, Aizawa activated his quirk, shutting down all of the shooting squad's quirks. How's this for easy? His scarf, which was now floating alongside his hair, struck forward and pulled the two villains from before and one other together in a bind before smashing them all together. You idiots. A large, three-horned villain said, stepping back. It's him, the quirk killer. The other villains all looked at each other in worry before all also taking a step back. Eraserhead. The man in question gave a quizzical look to the villains as he stalked forward. Didn't know that I had a reputation. He wrapped his capture scarf around a particularly brave four-armed mutant before shoving his knee right into the villain's nose, showing the others that he was more than capable of taking on any big ones they wanted to throw at him. So, who's next? As the horde of villains rushed at the black-haired hero, a lanky, blue-haired teen sighed in disappointment and resignment. I knew Eraserhead was cool, but this goes beyond his own hype. He was covered in corpse-like hands, the biggest of which obscuring his face. Kurogiri, get the kids. The large purple gate suddenly shrunk down before revealing itself as a tall, misty man in a bartender's uniform. Of course, Tamura Shigaraki. He disappeared mere moments after he spoke, an action that Aizawa grimaced at. Damn it, I missed him. He turned to where he knew his students were and could only pray that they'd be okay by themselves before continuing his fight. I knew that these grunts wouldn't be able to take a hero one-on-one, but this is just ridiculous. All the while, Shigaraki watched the hero dismantle his assault squad without any wasted movement. But that's why the doc cooked you up for me. His eyes shifted to the large, dark beast next to him and he grinned. USJ entrance. Izuku felt another spike of danger sense in his head and he quickly surged to the front of his class before holding out his arms. Everyone, get back. His words halted everyone and he turned around just in time to see what his quirk warned him. Damn. Well. A voice echoed into existence alongside a spiral of purple mist. You can't actually think I would let you escape, can you? The warper from the plaza had spread his form outwards, blocking off the students' only exit. The fun has barely even started. 13 put herself in front of the class and activated her suit, making her core glow gold. Who are you and what do you want? Black Hole was just itching to be released but she held off. Well, nothing much, just a new villain group making their debut in the flashiest way possible. That's what you heroes love, right? Kurogiri asked with a dark chuckle, sending a shiver down most of the students' spines. And how are you going to do that? But not 13s. Show everyone you're a pack of monsters by trying to kill children. Black wisps came off her arms as she spoke with rage, a detail Kurogiri was wary of. Well, we of the League of Villains were happy when we thought All Might had retired many months back. Izuku and Akira coughed. But to see him back, we thought it in our best interest to personally retire him. For good. The calm and confidence the warper spoke with baffled everyone. Though, we may have placed too many decoys around the city. We were hoping that it would keep away others from interrupting this execution. not him. His yellow eyes shifted to the kids and they all activated their quirks. But we'll settle with all of you. Nope. Bakugo rushed forward before the man could finish his sentence. Quirk active and face sporting a vicious and murderous grin. Not happening, ours whole. Yeah, man. And Kirishima was right beside him, arms jagged as his own quirk activated. We're not gonna be taken down in our first fight against real villains. Hirajiri chuckled as he made sure to move away his metallic brace when the teens attacked. Oh, you certainly live up to your school's reputation. His form suddenly wrapped over the two and they were gone. That's better. Damn it. 13 chided herself for her hesitance. I could have just pulled them back and turned it off. However, Kirajiri didn't give her the time of day for self-deprecation. Now, I think it's time for the rest of you to visit a few of my friends. And immediately grew to become a dome over the class. Izuku, Akira, Shoji, and Ida were the only ones fast enough to react and immediately rushed to their nearest classmate. Akira grabbed hold of Ochako and dove out. Ida activated his quirk and spear-tackled Sato. Shoji grabbed Zero by his tape, and Izuku bridle-held Mina before shooting out. That's it. And as soon as she saw that her last remaining students were safe and behind her, 13 activated Black Hole and aimed it right at the Warper. You're done now. Unfortunately for the hero though, Kirajiri knew a lost battle when he saw it and immediately backpedaled. I suppose warping away over half your class is sufficient enough. He drawled out before tendrils of cloudy, purple smoke began to pour off him. Now all that's left is the rest of you. The Warper couldn't finish his sentence as a flash of wind knocked into him, pushing him back against his will. Cloudy form, weak to large gusts wind. 20% of one for all was flowing throughout Izuku's body as he spoke. Did I hit something? A physical form. He decided to turn to his class after seeing the purple man groan while struggling to get up. That buys us like a minute. What are we gonna do? Akira made sure Ochako was okay before getting up and dusting himself off. First things first, we need to make sure everyone's here. He suddenly turned to Shoji. Shoji, can you see if everyone's still here? Got it. The six-armed teen suddenly grew out an army of arms before their hands became ears and eyes. It took a small moment, but he was able to get a view on everyone. We're good. Everyone is still in the facility. Ochako looked slightly panicked but mostly worried. What are we gonna do? How are we gonna get to them? What if? Akira's hand suddenly rested on her shoulder, glowing with a pulsing, golden energy. Don't worry, everyone's going to be fine. His actions were able to calm the girl down quickly and he turned to Ida. Ada, we need to signal the campus. You have to run there and make sure the teachers know we need help. The request caused the blue-haired teen to tilt his head. What? Why me? He pointed to the class representatives. Surely one of you two would be sufficient. Izuku's eyes shifted up to the Warper, who was now finally regaining his bearings, before turning back to Ida. I did the math based on the apprehension test. It surprised me, but your gears mean that you'd only be half a minute behind us. One for all flowed back into his body at 20%. Akira and I are gonna get the rest of the class and hold off the villains for as long as we can. Go. There was obvious confliction in Ida's eyes, but he quelled it and nodded. Of course, I'll bring them as fast as I can. He entered a runner's stance and his engines revved as his eyes transfixed themselves straight forward. I promise. It was that moment that Kirajiri decided he needed to get up. You are so confident to discuss your plans in front of me. He chided as his form grew back to a cloud. I would have thought Yui to teach you otherwise. Izuku looked the Warper dead in his eyes before giving him a small smile. It's only our 4th day. Followed up by surging towards the man and kicking at where he guessed the physical form was. Knew it. Luckily for the greenette, he was right and sent the Warper back again. Damn it. Kirajiri tried to shift himself to the door midair but ended up accidentally warping himself further away, throwing himself directly at the top step of the entrance and not at all where he wanted to. This isn't good. Ida had already reached the door and was looking back to his friends while waving at them. I will return, friends. Stay safe. Before letting his legs carry him away, engines roaring like lions. No. Kirajiri forced himself to get up and tried to rush forward to no avail. We're on a time limit now. He looked to the students and teacher in front of him and calmed himself before spreading his form out. Your friend will see nothing but defeat at his return. Unluckily for Kirajiri, Izuku was suddenly in front of him with his leg reeled back. Yeah, yours. The greenette watched with a small smile as his kick sent the Warper all the way back down to the main plaza before turning to Akira. Akira, come on. His best friend nodded and activated his quirk before rushing forward as well. Let's go. Before they both disappeared down the stairs. An action that 13 failed to object to. Wait, no. Her brows furrowed as the two left and she turned around to the remaining 6. The rest of you will remain here with me. We're playing the waiting game. Main Plaza. Aizawa wrapped the head of a villain with steel claws with his capture scarf before slamming his head into the ground and whipping him around like a wrecking ball. Holy shit, he's so cool. The action alone raised the hero's prestige in Shigaraki's eyes and he almost wanted to pull back the operation. It's not like All Might is here anyway. Kurogiri could just warp us out of the warper. Suddenly slamming into the fountain next to him made him pause. Wait, what? Ugh. The warper groaned as he nursed his head. I didn't even know that part of me could be hit. But that didn't compare to the dent he was sure he had in his metal brace. However, Kurogiri couldn't think on that for long since his ward was looking at him. Kurogiri, what just happened? The blue-haired teen's eyes shifted to the green and black forms heading down towards them, and he felt he wasn't going to like the answer. Against his better judgment, Kurogiri stood up. It was that one, the green one. He coughed out, pointing towards Izuku. I scattered half the class, but the rest dodged, and that one threw me away with what I've guessed is his quirk, a very powerful wind quirk. Shigaraki's eyes had stayed on the teen in question, and he watched as the greenette jumped into the center of the horde before kicking all around him, sending out arcs of wind that threw away all the villains. It got worse when the other teen arrived and just poked one of the biggest grunts, a one-eyed minotaur, and made them pass out cold. You've got to be shitting me. The lanky teen sighed, scratching his neck. It was bad enough that we had to deal with Eraserhead. Now we have to deal with a kid with a rare elemental quirk. He paused and thought as he watched Akira lay his hand on Aizawa and seemingly alleviate all the man's pain. A damn white mage. With the three heroes in question, Aizawa rolled his shoulders in surprise as he felt like he had actually had a good, proper sleep. However, he had a job to do. Reprimand his students. What are you two doing here? You were supposed to go with 13. Not an option, Akira said, shaking his head and pointing at Kurogiri. Warper over there scattered just over half of us throughout the entire facility. The other 7 are at the top of the steps with 13. Izuku nodded. We sent out Ada to grab the teachers so that we could take care of the warper and help you out, he explained, seeing the man's questioning look. We trust your abilities as a teacher and hero to defend us. Really, it's just... Akira huffed out a sigh. Izuku, just do it. They didn't have any time to mess around. And the greenette knew that. Right. Letting 20% of one for all back into his body. Izuku's face became serious and he jumped high in the air before bringing an axe kick down on the ground. The result was instantaneous, and the ground in the plaza shook and broke apart while the gathered villains, sans the 3 at the back, found themselves being thrown in the air from the force. My turn. Akira took advantage of the imbalance, and his own quirk flowed throughout his body before compacting in his fingers, and he surged forward to where he assumed the middle of the horde was. Let's see if this is effective. As they fell back down to the ground, the black-haired teen started to jab at all of them before they could meet the earth, effectively rendering all of them unconscious in a matter of seconds. An action that caused both Aizawa and Shigaraki to pause. What? And voice their confusion at the same time. The FCK. Okay, that was just Shigaraki. Ignoring their question, Akira turned back to Aizawa and looked him dead in the eye. Aizawa-sensei, you need to get back to the others. It was more of a demand than a request, and Aizawa didn't miss that. And why should I? Izuku simply pointed at the one villain that had yet to move. That thing, whatever it is, you won't be able to fight it, Akira, and I can. It was a harsh truth, one that their teacher, luckily for them, reluctantly accepted. All right, fine. He turned around to leave but left with one last message. If you two get hurt, or so help me, die, I'll find someone to bring you both back to life and give you detention. With that idle threat hanging over their heads, Aizawa took his leave. All right, Handman, Akira started, looking towards the only conscious villains left in the plaza. What's that big thug you got right there? Shigaraki squinted his eyes at the name but let it slide. He'd let it slide since he'd kill them soon anyway. This thug is just one of many bioengineered warriors I have in my party, he explained, presenting the large beast with a surprising amount of dramatic flair. This one in particular is my anti-symbol of peace, the one who will kill All Might, but you can just call it a Namu. The Namu grunted in response to hearing its name and stood up slightly taller. Its actions and the lanky teen's words caused some light distress to the students atop the steps. So, how many quirks does it have? Izuku, however, was completely unfazed. I'm guessing you've got some sort of muscle augmentation or power quirk worked in there, but what else has it got? His immediately caused Shigaraki to pause his presentation and stumble. I'm sorry, he wasn't, but it just slipped out. How do you? The lanky teen looked at Izuku closer and his eyes widened underneath the hand covering his face. If Izuku was worried about the fact a villain seemed to know him, he didn't show it. In fact, he smiled. Yeah, the last ones had strength quirks, regeneration, and absorption quirks. His eyes trailed the beast and he could sense an aura of danger around it without his quirk. This one might be stronger though. You're the green-haired Basta R&D that took out my pets. Shigaraki snarled, his breathing now heavy as he scratched his neck. However, he seemed to gain control of himself quickly and grinned. This Namu has shock absorption, super regeneration, and strength easily comparable to All Might's from last year, and it's been training. You're not going to be able to beat this one as easily. The Namu. Turns out that these things are called Namu. What a fitting name for a beast such as them. This one in particular looks like it's going to be a doozy. I hope Izuku and Akira have a way out of this. Dark Creature, Designation, Namu. Quirks. Power. This enhancement quirk has apparently risen this Namu's strength and physiology to the levels of All Might. Shock Absorption. Whoa. This quirk might be a problem. It lets the Namu tank any form of blunt force trauma. Let's hope there's a way around it. Super Regeneration. This one is just unfair. This quirk lets the Namu regenerate any damage that manages to get past his shock absorption. How can they win? Akira digested this information before smiling. These guys would have been absolutely smashed if All Might was actually here. His quirk flowed throughout his body and he entered a stance. Well then, it's time to see how strong we are. 40% of one for all flushed through Izuku's body as he categorized the new Namu into his head. If he says it has All Might's strength when he was weakened, that's still way beyond what I have now. Add on the shock and regen quirks and that's even worse. Despite his thoughts, the Greenette was more than ready to face off against the Dark Beast. Yeah, I'd say we could break it in before All Might gets here to finish it off. Shigaraki audibly growled at the teen's attempt at heroic mockery and jabbed the Namu in the stomach. Namu. The black creature responded with a grunt and the teen pointed forward. Kill them both. The Namu screeched loudly, its howl echoing throughout the plaza before shooting forward. Grog. An action that Izuku and Akira both copied. Let's go. And when the three powerhouses collided their fists together, the shockwave that shot out from their clash could be felt through the entirety of the USJ. Mountain Zone. Momo summoned a staff made of silver and threw it at Kaminari. Kaminari, use this. Don't waste yourself. Before summoning a metal bat and smashing two chicken-like villains in the head, knocking them to the ground. Die, basta RNDS. Her statement and actions caught wide eyes from Jiru. Whoa, yeah, Momo's got a battle side. The purple-haired teen ducked under a spiked wooden bat before thrusting her arms forward, sending out a wave of sound that knocked several villains back. I didn't know you liked fighting, yeah, Momo. Kaminari nodded as he jabbed the staff into a villain's head, immediately sending them into the realm of unconscious. Yeah, I thought you would have been more of a strategic fighter. He grunted as villain with an electricity quirk rushed him, unaffected by his quirk. Not good. Huh. Luckily for him, Momo was already jumping towards the villain's head. Two metal bats reeled back before she sent them forward. Discombobulate, and double-whacked him on both sides of his head, instantly knocking the villain out and cracking his mask. And with that, all the villains in the mountain zone were taken care of. All right. Jiru pumped her fist in the air as she threw her weapon back to Momo. We did that. Kaminari also gave his staff back to the onyx-haired girl. Man, thought I was a goner there for a second. He smiled widely at Momo and bowed to her. Thanks for the save, yeah, Momo. The girl in question simply caught their weapons and absorbed them back into her body before smiling back. Do not fret over it, Kaminari. I shall always assist a classmate in need. She had obviously slipped back into her regal stance and had her hands together in front of her. Jiru and Kaminari both took a second to appreciate the young woman that was in front of them before the former decided they should get moving. We need to get back to the class. Aizawa-sensei is probably. A shockwave suddenly passed over them and caused them to stumble. What in the hell was that? Kaminari asked, running to the edge of the mountain to find the source. Holy shit. And what he saw was nothing short of terrifying and amazing. And when the two girls followed him to see what he was staring at, they too could only agree with his statement. Holy shit. Landslide zone. Hagakure. Shoto jumped in front of the chartreuse-haired girl and put his left arm out to her. Stay back. Before thrusting his right arm forward, throwing forth a wave of ice so large that it covered the entirety of the landslide zone. Holy shit, dude. And made Hagakure drop her jaw in shock. I'm glad that I've got layers on my costume. You just turned the landslide zone into the Arctic. Shoto ignored his classmate in favor of walking up to one of the only conscious villains. He guessed said villain had a fire quirk since he was currently steaming. Ew. His eyes bore into the villains and he held up his hand. Your warper said that you were here to kill All Might. On what grounds do you believe your group is capable of that? The red-haired villain struggled in place before shouting when Shoto's hand started to creep out more ice. A weapon. A weapon. He struggled and steamed even more. Our boss has a weapon made specifically to fight All Might. Hagakure decided that moment to walk up and got eye level with the villain. And what weapon would that be? Before the villain could answer, a large shockwave passed over them, cracking Shoto's ice in a select few places. That one, and making the red-haired villain grin. However, he wasn't grinning for long as Hagakure kicked him over the head, knocking him out. Well, I guess they weren't kidding, she said as she looked over to the source of the shockwave. That thing definitely looks like it could take All Might. As she spoke, Shoto simply watched the battle, ignoring everything around him. It does. Ruined zone. Bakugo looked out the window of the ruined building he was in with a contemplative look on his face. Izuku and Akira were battling the large dark beast with no small amount of incredible technique and seemingly limitless amounts of strength and power. The action caused Bakugo's palms to twitch. That thing. The blonde reached his hand back and blew up a lizard villain that was trying to disguise himself before turning to Kirishima. Let's get back to the class. We're right next to the steps. Kirishima dropped a villain carrying a metal bat on his head before turning off his quirk. Yeah, alright. He rushed to catch up the blonde that was already walking away. Hey, did you feel that shockwave? Who do you think made it? The red-haired teen's question went unanswered as Bakugo continued to move towards the rest of his class at the entrance. Their strong, main plaza. Izuku caught the Namu's fist with both of his and struggled to hold it back. Akira, before redirecting it right into the ground, cracking it. Go, got it. Akira took advantage of the Namu's position and ran up on its back before charging his quirk into his fist. And smashing it into the beast's exposed brain, causing it to stumble and screech in pain. The two teens tried to get away from the Namu after that, but, wanting to fulfill its master's orders, the dark beast chased after and smashed its fist downwards on where the teens landed. Unfortunately for the Namu, they dodged and the beast now left itself right open for Izuku and Akira's next attack. Izuku had jumped up to avoid getting hit and was now falling down, aiming an axe kick at the Namu's head. With Akira, the black-haired teen had let the beast's hit graze him and used the momentum to swing around and slam his fist into the Namu's chin. When their attacks landed, they had effectively sandwiched the beast's head with the force of several dozen trucks each, and with Akira's quirk's energy bypassing the Namu's shock absorption and Izuku slamming his foot into the villain's brain, its quirks couldn't help and it became stunned. A situation that Izuku took advantage of by sliding under the beast's legs and jumping on its back before pulling its arms back. I got him. I got him. The greenette kicked the Namu in the head as he felt it struggle and turned to Akira. Do it. Akira didn't hesitate and nodded before his arms became covered completely in a golden coating of his energy and he slammed both of his palms into the Namu's stomach. Let's see how you deal with this. A strong wind began to pick up around the three as Akira kept his palms on the Namu and both of their screams could be heard all around the plaza. Light green and neon purple wisps flew out of the beast as Akira continued to take as much life essence from the Namu as he could and put it into himself. The Namu, however, despite being brainless, still had a small shred of self-preservation and began to thrash. This in turn caused Izuku to pull its arms back even harder, temporarily dislocating its shoulders, and kick it in the head again, which is exactly what it wanted. Turning its head as Izuku kicked, the Namu grabbed the greenette's leg with its beak and thrashed him off into Akira. It wasted no time after this to rush its downed opponents and began to barrage them with a flurry of downward strikes, its shoulders already healed. On crap. Izuku was the first to regain his bearings and quickly slapped the air to send the rest of his body upwards in order to dodge. However, the Namu caught the greenette mid-air and pulled him in by his legs before punching him hard in the chest, sending him flying back into the steps. Akira watched his friend fly back and was about to run over to him but was forced to back away when the Namu set its sights on him. Oh, alright then. And he set his own sights back in response. Rushing forward, the black-haired teen slid under the Namu's downward strike and charged his fingers with his quirk before striking out at the beast's arm 3 times. Rog. And when the Namu went to hit again, HRG, it found that its arm could only hang limply at its side, not at all responding to what it wanted it to do. However, before the Namu could even begin to try and ponder on what just happened to him, Izuku came flying back in, kicking at its brain again and making it stumble back. Attacking its brain is the only way to get past the shock absorption without Akira's quirk. The Namu's stumble left it open for attack again and Akira immediately rushed towards it again before hitting its other arm with the same 3 hits again, once more causing the limb to hang uselessly at its side. Izuku, let's do it, Akira shouted, charging all he could into one arm. In action, Izuku copied his 45% of 1 for all stocked itself strictly into his right arm. Right. With their quirks charged and the Namu standing still in confusion on what to do, the two teens both rushed towards their opponent and struck forward, Izuku with a backfist and Akira with an open palm. Their quirks' powers meshed together as they did so and the combined force completely ignored the Namu's shock absorption and sent it flying back to Shigaraki's side, which pissed said blue-haired teen off greatly. You little shits. Shigaraki turned to Kurogiri and glared at him. Get the flood zone squad here. He saw confusion in the warper's eyes and snarled. Now, luckily for the lanky teen, that worked and Kurogiri bowed before holding out his arms. Of course, Tamura. A multitude of portals suddenly opened above the plaza and geysers of water shot out alongside a horde of drenched villains. Flood zone. Sue croaked happily as she watched all of the villains disappear in a number of strange whirlpools. Tiro, it's nice to see everything work itself out. The villain beneath her, having his head crushed by her feet, did not share this sentiment. Please, let me go. I swear I'll turn myself in. Sue dutifully ignored him. Main plaza. Shigaraki tried to keep a level head and slowed his breathing as he looked to the confused horde of villains he'd summoned. Flood zone squad. He pointed towards Izuku and Akira with a hateful glare. Hold those two off." The villains all looked around at each other confused before nodding and activating their quirks. Those without emitter quirks simply bared their sharp teeth, fins, and claws at the two. Said teens, however, weren't in the mood for another round of expendables. "That's not happening." Izuku's right arm began to glow as bright as the sun as powerful winds and black and green lightning shot off the limb in waves. "One for all. 100%. What the hell? So much power. I can't. It's too much." The action alone scared the gathered villains, and many of them felt as though they were battling their own minds just to stay conscious. Izuku. For Akira, it mostly just confused him. "What are you doing?" He had activated his quirk at maximum power, feeling as though he needed to. The greenette confirmed that suspicion when he placed his hand on the ground. "Something stupid," he replied, smiling widely, and pulling a Bakugo. His power suddenly peaked and he pushed. Die. The quake that Izuku made from that single action could be felt from even outside the USJ and even rumbled the school to a degree. Every single villain in the plaza was thrown back and the plaza itself became nothing but a large crater. FCK. And had it not been by the grace of the Namu grabbing him, Shigaraki knew that he almost met the Shinigami. That's hacking. What kind of bullshit wind quirk is that?" "Not a wind quirk," Izuku whispered out, breathing heavily with a strong smile on his face. "Akira, a little help?" He shakily brought up his broken and very much disfigured arm, gushing with blood and filled with gashes. "Please." Akira himself quickly got over his own shock at what just happened and brought his hands over his friend's arm. Yeah. He slowly began to mend Izuku's bones and stuck his muscle fibers back together. "Izuku, that was a lot." Up at the entrance of the USJ, even though they couldn't hear him, all students and the two teachers gathered agreed with Akira's statement. "They're not even who we're here for." And Shigaraki was still complaining. One could say hyperventilating. "All Might hasn't even." Speak of the devil. Well, what do we have here? The sound of glass shattering made everyone look up to see All Might falling down from the top of the USJ's dome. My students being attacked by villains. All Might lightly landed next to his two proteges and looked at Shigaraki and the Namu with squinted eyes. Unforgivable. The large blonde's words and the pure power he radiated, alongside the fact that he was dressed as a bouncer, almost made Shigaraki actually shit his pants. "Namu, kill him," he shrieked, pointing forward before turning to Kurogiri and whispering, "Kurogiri, get us out of here now." The warper didn't need to be told that the Namu wouldn't be able to win this fight and silently wrapped himself around his ward and disappeared. Damn. All Might grimaced at the two villains get away, especially since one was a warper, but turned to his boys. "My boys, get back to your class." He fixed his eyes on the Namu and powered up. "I'll finish this off." The two teens didn't hesitate to listen and ran away, Akira leaving one last message to their teacher. "It has shock absorption and super regeneration." "Is that so?" All Might caught the fist the Namu threw at him without looking before sending a hard smash into the monster's gut, making it spit out blood. "Let's test that out." The symbol of peace grabbed the Namu's head before smashing it into the ground and throwing it up into the air. If it was shock nullification, you might have been a problem. Bruh. Arg. The Namu let out screeches as All Might punched it back upwards every time it fell, unable to fight back in the slightest. Stop. Inwardly, the large blonde was surprised that the creature was even able to attempt speaking but didn't let it bother him as he grabbed the creature's leg and swung it up. "How about just one more?" The flames of One for All flared within All Might as he charged as much of his power as he could before striking forward. TEXAASS smash. It was a true testament how much power Akira had restored in All Might as that one hit caused glass and stone to shatter as the Namu was sent into the atmosphere. In another universe, it took another All Might hundreds of hits to reach half that effect. USJ entrance. As Izuku and Akira arrived at the top of the steps, they promptly felt all of the adrenaline leave them and they both fell to their knees before sitting themselves down. Akira, however, a handful of their classmates weren't giving them the time of day. "Oh my god, I thought you were gonna die." In Akira's case, Ochako had run up and thrown herself right onto the black-haired teen's lap. Midoriya, divided by Midori bro. In Izuku's case, both Fumikage and Kirishima had run up to him to stop him from falling over. "Damn, man, that was a manly performance," Kirishima exclaimed as he checked the greenette's bleeding forehead. "Oof, that might be a concussion." Fumikage nodded with a grimace. "Quiet, unfortunate friend." Izuku chuckled at them both before wincing as he touched his own forehead. "Don't worry, it'll take a lot more than this to keep me down." In touching his head, he now saw the new scars that decorated his right arm. Oh, back with Akira, Ochako had finished hugging him and crying into his neck. "You're okay, right?" There was a slight accent that slipped out as she asked that question. An accent Akira didn't miss. "Yes, I am, Ochako." He responded with a crude replication of her accent before sitting up. "And I am particularly loving this position we're in." The black-haired teen's words rung in Ochako's head and she suddenly realized her position. Sorry, before scrambling off and bowing, causing Akira to chuckle. After that, Izuku and Akira were both carried off to the rest of the class, who they were relieved to find had all made it back safely. The two were met with cheers. Izuku, and in the Greenette's case, Mina met him with a large hug and holding his right arm. "Is your arm okay?" Her hand lightly trailed over the scars left on Izuku's arm and she grimaced. "I knew you said you had a backlash, but this, oh right, your arm," Kirishima said, taking his own turn to examine the Greenette's limb. "I can't believe you just turned the plaza into a crater with a push. That was incredible." Jiru chuckled with a nod. "Yamomo, Kaminari and I were still up on the mountain when you did it, but we could still hear your war cry." She held out her hand in a patented Bakugo stance before mimicking the explosive blonde's face. "Die." The impression had everyone, sans the blonde Pomeranian, laughing. "That's enough, class." And Aizawa, who was now addressing them all. "You can all feel free to discuss today's events after you all give individual reports of what you went through to the authorities outside." This caused all students to groan. "Reports? Come on." A groan Aizawa fixed with a glare of his quirk. "We also need to make sure all of your injuries are addressed," he continued, stressing his next statement. "This school has a responsibility to you and your well-being. Any and all injuries you have will be dealt with before you leave the campus today." Luckily for the black-haired man, his students all nodded at this and followed his order to go outside. When they did, they were met with multiple police officers, firefighters, EMTs, and other such first responders. The half of the class that were scattered by Kurogiri went to have their injuries checked first, while the others went to different police officers to give a report of what happened. Izuku and Akira, due to their battle with the Namu, were giving their report to the lead detective, Naomasa Tsukachi, another no-and-on one for all. "Nice report, kids. I didn't expect Toshinori to teach his students to do reports properly," the detective said with a laugh, earning a flat face from All Might. "I can't even remember the last time he made a report himself." "You're funny, Naomasa," All Might said with a dry tone before turning around in betrayal when he heard his Prochi's laugh. "How could you?" Off to the side, the many SWAT members gathered were locking away groups upon groups of villains in multiple of their transport trucks. One in particular was put aside strictly to the Namu that All Might had chased after and brought back down to earth after throwing it out of the USJ. "Don't worry, kids," Tsukachi started, tapping his board. "Based on your reports, that thing probably won't move without orders from this new Shigaraki guy." He smiled as he jabbed All Might in his side. "But we can always call this bag of muscles to get it if it rampages." The man's laughter was infection, and the other three heroes around him began to chuckle loudly alongside him. After that, it only took under an hour before the entire class had given their own individual reports to the authorities and had all of their injuries dealt with by the EMTs. Once they were given the green light, Nezu addressed them. "My dear students, I'd like to congratulate you all on your victory today," the Chimera exclaimed, sitting atop Aizawa's head and using the man's capture scarf as a seatbelt. "Villain encounters are not rare, but to have one of such magnitude on only your fourth day is unprecedented, especially for first years." There was an edge of annoyance on his tone for a moment, but it returned to its normal maniacal nature right after. "You can take tomorrow off to deal with your injuries and celebrate this. Consider it a 3-day weekend. You've all earned it." The class cheered. "Yeah, thanks for listening. Story. Subscribe my channel.